piece of junk.
Hello there and welcome to Trash Compactor. In this episode I'm going to be making my ultimate Han Solo from Star Wars and also showing you how to put a pinhead onto a peg body. So this video is serving two purposes. So I'm going to be using a retro Han, and to put a pinhead onto a peg body using a piece of Lego, which I actually recently used in my IG-11 video as a base to be able to get the head on. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And this is really good because usually all you can do is put pin to pin body and peg to peg body, but this allows you to swap over. I've got my retro Han. They're not bad moulds, they're fine, they're not as good as the originals. They're sometimes the Chewy for some reason is a little bit smaller, but compared to the original I never liked the vintage style Han head. So I want to swap it for an Endor Han head. I've got lots of these lying around because I've used lots of Endor bodies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop and boil the retro Han. So he goes into a cup of boiling water. And then using my piece of Lego, I'm going to use the ball joint. I'm literally going to cut away everything, but leave the peg with a little bit of plastic at the bottom. The idea is just to get it as long as possible, a little bit of a point, and then I can trim it away, narrow it down if I need to. So once I've cut that away, neatened off the edges, you can see I've got a rough peg with a little bit of plastic sticking at the bottom. So retro Han has been sitting in a cup of boiling water for quite a little while, and the head should come off quite easily. This is the first time I've probably pulled the head off a retro figure. It's going to be very much the same as vintage, just the plastic's a little bit more modern, so it's going to be a little bit more pliable. Using a tea towel, as you can see, it pops off extremely easily. Exactly the same mould as the original. I'll probably use the head somewhere else into another build, but the idea is I'm going to use the bit of Lego and see how far that needs to go into the body, as this is the first time that I'm doing this to a retro figure. I have used this method before on my X-Wing pilots, worked quite well, but not sure about the retro, so I'm giving it a go. So you can see there's the ball joint, and what I'm going to want the ball to do is to go into the Endor Han. When it pops in, it's a good fit. However, you'll see in a mo, if you don't do something with the ball, you end up with a Han Solo that looks like one of the last 17, where he looks like he's had a anaphylactic shock reaction to some kind of seafood and his whole neck and chin is swollen up. But before I sort out the ball, I'm actually going to pop this into the figure. So a little bit of glue, super glue of course. Try not to get glue on the figure because it's black and you get glue on it, it ends up marking it. So I'm going to squeeze that in and push it in. You would be able to get this off if you just pulled it with a piece of pliers, but the idea is get that in, leave it to dry, and it will become solid. So while he's drying, I'm going to drop the Endor Han head into the cup of hot water to soften it up, and then I'll come back to it in about 5 minutes. So that's had time to dry off. Now to fish the head out. Using a pair of large pliers just to grip it because it is boiling water. You don't want to stick your fingers in there. Give the head a little bit of a shake just to get the excess water out. As you can see, it's quite squishy. Now at the minute I've not done anything to the ball. So you see if I squeeze the head on, it will go on, it just needs a bit of a push. I probably could have left this to dry a little bit longer because it actually does slightly move a little bit in the body. But you see, I can get the head on, it works fine. It's just anaphylactic Han. His neck's all swollen because the ball inside the soft head is a bit too big. But it's a good fit. Could trim the neck down a little bit at the back, but I'm really not concerned, it's absolutely fine. And I think it's quite effective, looks quite good. It's a good head. I like the original body. You could paint his trousers blue if you wanted to take it a bit further and make it your ultimate Han, but I like the black outfit. I like the retro, the vintage figure, the red stripes down the trousers, so it's just quite nice putting the Endor Han head onto the retro body. So I'm just going to take the head off, grab a bit of sandpaper and just give the ball a little bit of a sand to narrow it. You could do this while it was out the figure. Probably was sensible to do so because the last thing I want to do is scratch the actual body of the figure. But I'm just being careful, so I'm okay. It's not going to do any major damage. And give it a really, really good sand just to get a little bit of the volume off the ball. So there we go. I've sanded the ball down quite a little bit, taking quite a bit off. And then, as you can see, that has narrowed the ball joint quite a bit. If I now grab the Endor handhead, which popped in the hot water again. So grab the Endor handhead, which has softened up in the water, and now if I pop that onto the ball, again it's going to be a little bit tight, but it will go on. And there we are. I've got the Endor handhead onto the retro solo body. So one thing that drives me nuts about the retro figures is they don't hold their weapons at all. The mouldings are great, they're good, but they don't hold weapons. It's just the only one that does is probably Chewbacca. I've never been a massive fan of the curved arm on Han, but I don't want to swap his arms, so what I'm just going to give it a go is stick him in the boiling water and just see if I can straighten his arms. I could swap his arms out with the Endor Han, but the trouble is they are actually a little bit longer, so his body's going to look a bit weird with these arms that are longer than they should be, as there is a little bit of a height difference between the Star Wars Han and the Return of the Jedi Han. So their Han's been sat in the boiling water, become nice and soft, not as soft as probably a vintage figure would have done, but if I bend the arm, force it back, trying to just get it to bend a little bit straighter, and then holding it in place. What I found is as soon as you let go, it's actually just popping straight back. There isn't a great deal of difference, so keep holding it, trying to get it to cool down. The ideal thing to do normally is have some cold water nearby, hold it, plunge it into the cold water, and it will usually maintain the shape for a bit. But you'll notice here that if you compare the two, there is a slight difference. So against vintage Han to retro Han, the little bending I've done has brought his arm down just a tad. But anyway, he still can't hold his blaster, and he doesn't have a holster like Hoth Han does. They should have done that on more figures. We'd probably still all have our guns from when we were kids. So what I'm going to do is utilise something that I made in my store. You don't need to do this, you could do something else. This is a Stormtrooper leg holster, and there's one that clips on a left leg and one that clips on a right leg. So by using the right leg holster, I'm going to trim off the moulded holster that is on the retro Han, and then the idea is I'm going to clip this onto my Han. Because the good thing that I discovered after designing the Stormtrooper holster is that the hand blaster fits perfectly into it. It's a little large, but this is vintage. It's an accessory. All the accessories are a little bit large, and I just like the fact that he's got his blaster in his holster on his leg. So to paint it, I'm just going to use some enamel gloss. Han's quite a shiny figure. Because it is a small item, normally if I was doing a figure I'd prime it, but because this is a tiny little piece, I'm just going to daub the gloss paint all over it and give it a really good coating. So that's dried off now. What I need to do is now clip it onto the leg. So again, it does normally fit a Stormtrooper, but it does also fit the Han Solo figure quite well. I think that's quite a good fit and works quite well on my Han Solo. So there we go, that is my ultimate Han Solo. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Remember, you can paint his trousers blue if you want and make him a super ultimate Han. That's entirely up to you. That's the point of customising. So, hope to catch you soon. Thanks for watching.
What a piece of junk.